Welcome to Austin Eras, where we explore Austin's transformation into a 21st century boomtown and the voices shaping its past, present, and future.
Welcome to the Austin Eras podcast. I'm your host, Adam Flagg, and I'm really excited for our guest today. I want to start out by sharing where we are today. There are not many places in Austin that feel over 100 years old, but right here on Congress Avenue, there's one that does. The Paramount Theatre has been part of this city's story for generations. School field trips, South by Southwest, movie premieres, comedy shows. And if you look up at the ceiling and around you here, there's still a hole from when Harry Houdini performed there in the early 1900s. This is a place that held the memories of Austin for over a century, and somehow it still feels alive. Today, we're recording inside the Paramount Theatre with the person responsible for helping carry that into the next 100 years. Welcome to the show, Jim Ritts. You're CEO of the Austin Theatre Alliance. Thank you for being on the show.
Adam, thank you for inviting me.
I really, every time I walk in the Paramount, it feels like I'm sitting inside Austin history, but it still feels alive. Why does that place feel that way?
I appreciate you saying that, and I think it is one of the most important aspects about the Paramount Theatre. 6 generations have been coming in here. We are one of fewer than 25 theaters in the United States who have reached their 100th birthday with having never closed and exactly the same footprint. So that communal experience of 110 years is reflected in everybody who has been here. They will talk about it, including artists. It just feels different. And then later we'll talk about it, but I also think feeling the presence of the ghosts in this theater is also a part of it.
It feels a bit that way. You're setting up today, looking around. You can see the floorboards. You could see the popcorn on the ground still from last night's show with Nimesh Patel. But let me tell the listeners a little bit about who you are. So, CEO of the Austin Theatre Alliance, your name is Jim Ritts. You operate the Paramount and State Theaters here and the Moon Tower Comedy Festival. Before you came to Austin, Jim built a career across media and sports, from working on ABC sports broadcasts with Keith Jackson, Monday Night Football as well, to leading Channel 1, where he helped launch Anderson Cooper's career, and also served, this is crazy, the commissioner of the LPGA. We're going to have to talk a little bit about that. But after decades in high-performance media and leadership roles, Jim returned to Austin and has spent the last 15-plus years helping steward one of the city's most iconic cultural institutions. So
It's a linear career, isn't it?
It's wild. It's wild. You seem like the kind of person that you see an opportunity, you go, that sounds interesting, I'm just going to go for that.
I think you've really hit the nail on the head. From the earliest time in my life, the thing I most cared about was doing interesting things. I'm a middle-class kid. I don't know where that came from, but all I cared about was doing interesting things. And here I am, at 72, and there's never been a period of time in my life where what I was doing wasn't inherently interesting to me.
Yeah, clearly. I mean, let's talk about this unique career. So Keith Jackson, you worked with him. What other sports groups did you work with along the way?
Well, the key was, we were Gophers when we were 16, 17, 18 years old. There was a group of about 5 or 6 of us working on ABC telecast. This is before, to your listeners, this is before cable television. So there were 3 networks, and ABC was the king of everything. So if we could get to those events, they'd pay us $15 a day, and we'd do whatever they needed from us. And one thing led to another, and it became less expensive for them to fly me around as a second production assistant, which meant I was at 17, I was flying all over the country. When I was at the University of Texas in undergraduate school during football, I'd go to school on Tuesday afternoons, Wednesdays and Thursdays, and fly to wherever the NCAA game was with Keith, and then with Frank Gifford on Monday Night Football. So it was a really unusual collegiate experience, but what it meant was I had a chance to see a much larger world between football and also wide world of sports. So I did a lot of interesting things in my life that were tied to socially important things like Billie Jean King and Bobby Riggs' match.
So you go to Northwestern for a
Graduate
master's
school.
in the Medill School.
Right.
And then the next thing I see in your career is you're kind of building networks, right? So Channel 1, I told someone about Channel 1. They said, I remember watching that when I was a kid in school. What is Channel 1?
Well, Channel 1 was we started a group, it was called Whittle Communications, was the group out of Knoxville, Tennessee. And the long and the short of it was there was a massive decline in cultural literacy in the United States, specifically among teenagers. They weren't reading newspapers, they weren't watching the news, etc. And so what we decided is that there was a way we could do that. And at the end of the day, what we did was we put satellites when they were the size of a small conference room on top of 12,000 secondary schools, installed 440,000 television sets in those rooms, and we daily produced a 12-minute news program for teenagers. And what we did was we did not commit the cardinal sin that everybody would try to do something like this, which was they would dumb the news down. Single worst thing you could do. What we did was we made it relevant to teenagers. And our programming group was phenomenal at those people they put in front of the camera. Anderson Cooper's an example, Lisa Ling. If you watch CBS Sunday Morning, Tracy Smith is from there. About half their cast came out of Channel 1. And it really did make a massive difference in young people's understanding of their relationship to the world.
Yeah, I mean, no small task. It sounds like 12,000 some satellites. This is a pretty interesting lift.
It was a fascinating. We were young, and I think, as so many entrepreneurs will say to you, and I know you talk to a lot of them, is had you known it was going to be as hard as it was, you're not sure you would have taken it on.
Yeah.
But when you do, the difference is when you hit those bumps, on the speedway, you go like, okay, I have three choices. I go around it, I go over it, I go through it, but what I'm not going to do is take the exit ramp.
Yeah.
We're going to make this happen, and that team of people there's a large team, but there were four of us that were really the drivers of it, and it was an extraordinary life experience.
So sports into media and back to sports.
Back to sports.
LPGA in the 90s. This is kind of when the LPGA became really relevant. Tiger Woods came on the scene on the men's side. Golf had a bright spotlight on it at that time.
I was very fortunate. My first year was a player named Annika Sorenstam's first year. She only goes on to be the greatest player in the history of women's golf. And we were really fortunate because it fit into my wheelhouse. We were becoming the international tour before the men's side was. Mm-hmm. And we had a great player from Australia, a wonderful young teenager from Korea who wins the U.S. Open. So I had all these things to really deal with. I knew domestic television, and I knew about how to negotiate a deal where we could hold on to rights, and we took the LPGA worldwide, actually before the PGA Tour did, driven by these individual communities of Australia and the Pacific Rim and Asia. And that was really an extraordinary experience, and I did that for about four and a half years.
Well, let's figure out how did you get to Austin? You left Austin after going to UT. What brought you back, and what led you to the Paramount?
Well, the single answer to that is I married a woman from Austin, Texas, and she was kind enough to come be with me in early 2001 in New York City. And she'd been there about 4 or 5 months, and then 9/11 happened, and she never blinked. If it had been opposite, I'm not so sure I wouldn't go, hey, I love you, but I think I'm going to go back down to Austin. She hung in with me there. We had a great adventure where basically I took a year off from the world. I didn't have a cell phone. I didn't have a laptop. We lived over in Italy and Spain for a good portion of that period of time, mainly just to clear my head, because I had been working since I was 16 years old, traveling all around. And when we made the decision to come to Austin, it was to continue the sabbatical. And then one thing led to another. We became supporters of the Paramount Theatre. But more importantly, what I came to really understand was the importance of the culture at the Austin Theater Alliance. That was the differentiator, and when they asked me if I'd ever think about doing something like this, my answer was no, but I'd never thought about being commissioner of the LPGA or building Channel 1. But you could tell how important the Paramount was to this community. I mean, really, you could feel it, and you could feel it in the bones of the people that you were meeting as a patron, how deeply they cared about the place and what that meant. And so I thought that was an interesting kind of mix of, I'm a person who has always, if you will, monetized content. And this is a place that has focused largely on the preservation of this extraordinary place. Well, you can do those two things at the same time. And I thought possibly with my tolerance for risk and trying to grow things, that it might be an interesting marriage. I think the single most important thing was that the board of directors was open-minded, that they were willing to think about somebody who is, I'd never run a nonprofit. That's not technically true. The LPGA and PGA Tour are nonprofits, but you know what I mean in that. But they were willing to take a risk, and it's, very shortly I'll have had, in fact, probably by the time this podcast airs, I'll have been in this role for 15 years. I haven't done 15 years at anything other than marriage. And it's been an extraordinary experience.
It's an amazing place to be able to guide and shepherd along in some ways. I think I want to change gears. I want us to go to this Good Hang segment, because I think it's fun for someone that's been back for a while in Austin, that's in the entertainment and nonprofit space, to tell us a little bit more about what you enjoy around the city. So this question I love to ask every person, which is, if you could have dinner with any Austinite, living or dead, who would it be and why?
Oh, my goodness. Wow. I have to think about that for a moment, because there's so many. I was so fortunate. When I was in undergraduate school, it was 72 to 76. So that's when Cosmic Cowboy music movement was beginning. All those things were happening. Though I wasn't here that much, I went to Armadillo headquarters and Castle Creek and all of that. And I guess I would say, and people would probably castigate me for saying this, maybe Jimmy Buffett.
Okay.
During the period of time he was here, because he credited Austin with having helped him get his life in order. And he would pop up, and you'd see him at Castle Creek playing with B.W. Stevenson or Jerry Jeff or all those folks. And I've always been fascinated by Jimmy Buffett, because he's seemed to be epitome of when I said to you earlier, all I ever wanted to do was interesting things. I kind of think that was what drove him as well, was I want to do interesting things, and I want to pursue a business life that reflects my values, because he was a hugely successful business person for all his Barefoot and Key West and all the other things, and a great musician. He was a great business person, but he did it his way, and he was one of the first people I've ever seen to do that. So I'd say
that's a good choice. He wasn't here that long, I don't think, but he built such a culture around his life. He had the Parrot Heads. I mean, how many bands have those kind of loyal followers?
100%. And Kenny Chesney's kind of moved into that space with no shirt, no shoes. No problem.
You and your wife Lisa, when you feel most at home in Austin, where do you go? What makes you feel attached to the city?
Wow, we're as you can imagine, we have a lot of nights here at the Paramount State Theatre. What we will do is, let's take something recently. We love to go to shows. We love to hear music in town, whether it's Continental Club or Antone's or outdoor festivals, whenever we can be a part of that. We love to go out to eat, and we have a lot of smaller hangs where we like to go or see friends, and that's probably the key factor for us when we go out, is it gives us a chance to be with our friends, because with 570 shows that we manage a year.
Is that right? 570
over the last 12 months.
I assume you don't get a lot of breaks from that. Yeah.
No, you have to be careful about it, and I try to be better than I was in the beginning. Otherwise, I think I would have burned out. And honestly, the greatest asset of this entire organization is, one, the buildings, but it's the people who work here. We have 67 full-time people, and the executive management team is extraordinary. And I don't say this as a point of humility, but the reality is we are so entrenched in our culture and what we do in the direction of where we're heading. If I wasn't here, I wouldn't be missed, because the quality of the people and how passionate they are, how intellectually curious they are. Yeah. They all have a side hustle of some kind which feeds their energy, and I love that. But they work really, really, really hard. And that's one of the things, I think that's, at the end of the day, is the real differentiator in our business, is these people are incredibly passionate, and they have all bought into this idea of unreasonable hospitality. Yeah. How do we every day take it's unbelievable. Will Yarda from 11 Park Madison, I think he had such a clear understanding. We translated it to mean take really good care of the patrons, really good care of the artists, but more importantly, take really good care of one another. And if we do those three things, everything's probably going to take care of itself. And everybody has really bought in to that way of operating, which means we're not vulnerable should something happen to me or one others. We have bench strength, but everybody is on the same page in this extraordinary place.
I love it. And your answer, I think, took us back to the Paramount, which is great because I think the Paramount's so defining. It's also a huge Austin tradition here. In many ways, different things happen throughout the year. I want to pivot to what's an Austin tradition that you hope never fades but doesn't have anything to do with the Paramount?
Well, actually, it does have something to do with the Paramount.
Okay.
What I'm hoping is that South by Southwest Festival finds its way.
Yeah.
Under the new ownership, they've got a challenge, and I understand that. But when you go back to South by in the middle 80s and what it meant to the city, and most importantly at that time, what it meant for the music community here, that path isn't quite as clear today. And what I'm hoping is that as they find their new way and how their new ownership is going to evolve, I hope that it remains at its core the two things of music and film. Because I think it's really important. And I don't mean just economically. I just think it's important for our city. It puts us on the map. It used to be for 10 or 11 days, now 7 days. But it puts us all on the map, and people have an understanding of the creative community that we have here. That's something. I mean, I will forever always wish Armadillo World Headquarters would come back. And the folks who now actually own that brand, I think they're going to do some interesting things with it.
That's interesting. Yeah, okay. I want to bring our listeners into this room with us right now. For people who know the Paramount but don't really know its history, what makes this place so special? Can you kind of bring us back to when it opened and some of the early key events here?
Well, let's go back to 1915 when it opened as the Majestic Theater. This theater is roughly 1,300 seats. The total population of Austin, Texas in 1915 was roughly 30,000.
Okay.
So talk about a gamble when you think about it. But you referenced Harry Houdini, who played 8 shows here in February of 1916. A third of the population of the city of Austin was in this theater to see Harry Houdini. So the Knoll family who built it, they really did have an understanding of that period of time of the vaudeville trains and how they moved around, and that was really entertainment. And then it grew into being silent film as a part of it, and then talkies. And this building was built for that transition.
Is that wild? That's wild to think about, the fact that silent movies were screened in this.
Absolutely. And what's interesting is where you're sitting right now, you would be looking down, and the Marx Brothers were in here. Orson Welles was in here. Katharine Hepburn was here. You can go on, and Miles Davis in 1983 played here. All of the greats came through here, and for the longest period of time, this was the only place of this size. The Austin Opera, Austin Club now, but the opera was over there. But this was the largest and had, from the very beginning, broad community sort of support because of you weren't bound by any one discipline. You could basically put anything on the stage, and with this community being as diverse as it is, it would help support those risks that you would take, and that has continued all the way through. Now, in the early 70s, downtown was in trouble, and the Paramount Theater was scheduled to be torn down, and a Holiday Inn was going to be built.
Can you imagine?
But no, and it's I joke about it because we'll talk about this later. We're in a capital campaign, but I can't fathom standing around talking to people trying to raise money for the Holiday Inn. But there were 3 gentlemen, Chuck Eckerman, Steve Scott, and John Bernardoni, who by their own admission said we didn't have any money, we didn't have any political power, but we couldn't imagine this place being closed. And by sheer will, they kept it alive. And there are a number of people. Lady Bird Johnson was incredibly helpful. A number of other folks. The Crenshaw family was very, very, very important in all of this. But at every point in time, I think this says more about the relationship between the Paramount and this community than anything else. Every time that this place has been in peril, somebody or bodies in the Austin community have always risen up to support and make sure it doesn't go away, because they believe it's as important as we believe it is important to be here.
Yeah, I mean, once saving something might be chance. Second, third time, I think makes it a cultural icon, a legend, and the community says we cannot let this
That's
go.
exactly right, and that's exactly right, because I love the new places that are being built in town, and entertainment centers and other things, because they're bringing an entirely different group of artists coming into Austin. That's fantastic. But there's just nothing like this in Austin. And I'm not one of those people. I love the new Austin, right? I was here 72, 76. You have a right to say, oh, I wish it was like that again.
Yeah.
I don't. There were a lot of things we didn't have access to. But what I do know is that this place, when we think about all those places, Liberty Lunch, Castle Creek, Armadillo, the Opry House, all those places, they're all gone.
Yeah.
And we're here, and Antone's is still here. And Antone's is about Clifford Antone,
They're
not
on their
where
sixth
he is.
location, though.
But that's
Yeah.
the thing I think that's really interesting. What I think makes Antone so important is because it's the spirit of Clifford Antone,
Yeah.
not the physical space. Because your Antone's is different than my Antone's from 75 in that period of time. But that's one of the things that make this is one of the moments of community continuity that I think is incredibly important. And I know there's been a lot of discussion about this concept of, third places, home and offices as being a place. Well, the third place may have become more important since the pandemic, and maybe because of digital communication and other things. This is the place where the community connects. And I had somebody wonderful, Christy Pipkin, say to me one time when we were leaving or departing from the Paramount from a tribute we were doing for, I think it was for Mr. Whitliff. She walked by and she said, "You do understand this is Austin's church, right?" And I went, hadn't really thought about it, but you think about community connection and where people build their friendships and their experiences. This place has been doing it for 110 years.
It's incredible. And I want to go back that 110 years. I want to go back to Houdini, because I think he's so iconic, and the fact that he did 8 shows here, 1916?
February 1960, he was supposed to do 4, and the reception was so extraordinary he canceled his next stop and stayed here for 4 more.
Okay, so tell me a little bit about what people would have experienced in 1916 when he was here, and how in the heck did he get permission to drill a hole in the beautiful ceiling of the Paramount?
Ceiling of Paramount. Well, first of all, you have to go back and understand that, as the great writer George Bernard Shaw said, the 3 most famous people in the world were Harry Houdini, Sherlock Holmes, and another fictional character. But it was really true. At that period of time, he was the most famous entertainer in the world. And so if he was coming in, he wasn't suspended from the ceiling, but something was lowered from a turnbuckle that was up at the top of that hole. You would do anything other than burn the place down to have Harry Houdini here. He was that powerful.
Yeah.
And that was, and as I said, a third of Austin came to see him. And I suspect if they'd had another week, they'd had 2/3 of the entire population of Austin in here. And I think that set a difference very early on, that this was going to be a place that was going to be current, and it was going to be featuring people that you otherwise had no place that you could see them in Austin, Texas. You could say this was the launching pad of sort of modern entertainment in the city of Austin, because those kinds of artists didn't have another place to play here. If the Paramount hadn't been built first as the Majestic and then becomes, the Paramount Theatre in the early 30s.
We're live music capital of the world, but in some ways you can say we're an entertainment capital. I mean, maybe there's a Vegas and New York, maybe there's a few other cities that compete, but if anything, the Paramount, I'm hearing, was kind of what put Austin on the map and began the whole journey.
I think in some ways it did. Obviously the artists who lived here and the creative support of this community was incredibly important. But I think one of the reasons why the Paramount has endured being so extraordinarily loved is because this community lets us have a wide swath of what we can bring and put on our stages. I mean, just here recently on a Sunday night, we had, an Indian comic, Namesh Patel, sold out. Next door, we had Kerry Rodriguez and Laboratorio sold out at the State Theater. And that is the diversity of just that bespeaks what this community will support and what we can put on our stages. It's what built the Moon Tower Comedy Festival that now it's in its, we just finished our 15th year, and it's the largest annual comedy festival in the United States now. But it's because this community supported us and was willing to let us push the boundaries, on both sides, push the boundaries. And our pact with the community here is we will keep presenting things and create that are of interest to you and create an environment where you are welcome to come into this house. And I think that bodes well for us for the next 100 years.
Absolutely. I think you've been here, almost 15 years, and I'm sure you've seen shows well earlier than that over your life.
Right.
One thing you mentioned to me was when Maya Angelou was here.
Oh.
Tell us a little bit about what made that night so special for you.
Well, Maya Angelou this was her home in Austin, and this was the last time. Maya Angelou, a lot of people don't know, is Dr. Angelou was very, very tall, and she was having some knee issues, and so she didn't fly. She traveled by bus. And the evening she was going to be playing the Paramount Theatre, she was in a small vehicle between her bus altercation. A crash with another a car, and they weren't sure they were going to be able to make it here in time. But we would hold the house forever. Well, 2 minutes before time comes, our production manager calls me and says they've arrived and Dr. Angelou wants to meet you. So I came down from the Houdini Lounge where we were with a bunch of donors. Yes, it's called the Houdini Lounge.
I love it. Great
right.
name.
And I went downstairs, and we had the red curtain closed on the front of the stage, right behind us here. It's normally never closed, but it was closed. And so when I came down, I walked behind it, and there was Dr. Angelou in a wheelchair and on oxygen. And I walked over because I was going to be introducing her, and it was a pretty impactful moment for me because I walked over and introduced myself, and I said, I have the honor of introducing you. Is there anything in particular you'd like me to say? And I said, but I want you to know I sort of believe blessed are the brief. And she just looked up and she went, brevity. All right. And so I'm walking out, right? And in 15 seconds, I'm going to talk for 30 seconds. And the woman I have just left is on oxygen in a wheelchair. 2 minutes later, that red curtain opens, and there she is standing, and she gives an hour and 15 minutes readings from memory and absolutely gave them Maya Angelou all night, standing ovation. And literally she finishes, the curtain closes, I'm up there in 30 seconds, she's back in the wheelchair and she's back on oxygen. And I just went, this is the consummate pro. And if everybody who was giving the standing ovation, if you knew what I know, you'd be in absolute tears, because it was, I don't know, it just this rare ability to find the energy and the light inside yourself. And for that hour and 15 minutes, she lit up, and then she went back to her personal health issues. And I am just so enamored with people who are so dedicated. I'm not going out there and going on that stage unless I can give you what you're expecting. And she was one of the greatest examples of that.
Well, I mean, you've seen some of the most incredible performers of the entire world step onto the stage, and it sounds like she was an absolute pro. I regret not seeing her.
No, and I think she would take that as very high praise. I mean, she was so extraordinary. She spoke 5 languages. She was an editor, of a newspaper in the Middle East. She was a cable car driver, and as a teenager in San Francisco, wrote a Broadway play, was in Broadway. I mean, it's like, you think you're busy, right?
Yeah.
And then you read this and you go, oh my God, she does more in a year than I have in my career. And she was just simply a remarkable individual.
Was there a moment, whether that was once you became executive director or prior, where you personally realized that Paramount is different? You had that moment with Maya, but who else? What else has kind of brought out that fielding?
There were a couple, and I'll try to be very brief here. The first was in my third or fourth year, I thought I really understood the community's relationship to this place, but we were going to have Hal Holbrook doing Mark Twain, and he had done it for something like 30 straight years at the Paramount Theatre, and he was coming towards the end. And I was again up in the Houdini Lounge, and a gentleman I know walks in a bit, and he's got a young man with him, and he introduces me, and it's his son. And I'm shaking his son's, and I said, "Have you ever been in the Paramount before?" And he said, "No, sir, I haven't." I said, "I'm so glad you came in." And his dad goes, "Well, it wasn't really his idea." He said it was my idea.
Okay.
He said it's his 13th birthday. And I looked at him, I said, "That's so cool, you're here for your 13th birthday." And his dad goes, "Well, the reason I wanted to bring my son to celebrate his 13th birthday at the Paramount Theater with Mark Twain as played by Hal Holbrook is because my father brought me here on my 13th."
Wow.
And I was going,
Generations.
"Oh, exactly right." And I go, and I immediately start welling up because what you just said is exactly it. I realized in that instant, this place was connecting 3 generations, a grandfather, a father, and I can promise you that young person, he can't come to see
Can't
Hal
get Hal,
Holbrook,
but someone else.
But he will bring a son or a daughter here, and it'll put 4 generations. And it was literally, bam, in that moment I went, I now completely get it. I understand why this is the connective tissue in this community. This is just one father and one son. But we have almost 300,000 people who come through our doors every year. And how many of those connections and things are happening here? Because we're big enough to attract that kind of talent, but we're small enough that it is still intimate. You're intimate with the stage, you're intimate with our bartending staff because you've been coming in, and we have people in our bartending staff who's worked with us for 35 years. And so it is really, I'm not going to, pretend it's your neighborhood bar, but it is a place of intimacy, and it impacts your entire experience here.
It's incredible. We're talking with Jim Ritts, the CEO of the Austin Theater Alliance, on Austin Eras. I think this is one of the most important cultural institutions in Austin. When we come back, we'll talk more about what's happening at the Paramount today and where it's going next. If you're enjoying this episode, make sure to subscribe, rate, and share Austin Eras at austineras.com or anywhere else that you get your podcasts. Also, we're launching a newsletter and hosting more events and happy hours around town. So if you want to stay connected, send us a note at info@austineras.com. We'd love to hear from you.
In every episode of Austin Eras, we uncover the city's history, vibrant present, and bold future. Just like Austin, your financial journey is a story worth crafting. At Collective Advisors, led by Adam Flagg, Managing Partner, Senior Wealth Advisor, and Certified Financial Planner Professional, your story is in skilled hands. From investments to retirement planning, Adam and his team bring together a collective of dependable professionals to help you build, maintain, and enjoy financial security. Start your financial legacy today at collectiveadvisors.com or call 512-467-1923. Investment advisory services offered through CWM LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor.
All right, we're back with Jim Ritts, the CEO of the Austin Theater Alliance, joining us from the Austin Eras podcast live inside the Paramount Theater. I want to jump right into the present. We've been talking a lot about the past and the history, but what makes them still relevant today in a city that's changed this much around this block in this city?
That's a great question, and there's a very simple answer first. We are such an inextricably important community asset. This is where the city connects. They come here to laugh, to be moved, to maybe think differently about something, or simply to be informed. But what it does is it's here so that they can be together. That's incredibly important. I also think that what's so important about this place is that though our primary business is what we put on our stages, we have 7 or 8 full-time people in our education department, and we impact the lives of 35,000 school students every year through bringing them to shows that they get to see specifically for them as field trips from their schools, with the majority of those being Title I schools. And those kids, it's frequently the first time they have ever been in a theater. We have programs in 16, 17 elementary schools with third graders called the Story Wranglers program that is to help you learn how to collaborate and how to communicate better. But what it's really about is helping you as a third grader understand your capacity internally and to be confident about what you do. So while we focus on all those things, as we were talking a moment ago, we managed over 570 events over the last 12 months. 300,000 people come through our doors. Our direct economic contribution is 22 to 25 million a year, but it's far more than that. It's the traffic that we bring down to Congress Avenue north of 6th and going up, and the vitality and driving the restaurants and everything else. It's both an economic and a community story, and it is more vital today than I think at any other time in its history.
Yeah, I think you're right. There's a through line that, the fact that you're connecting school children at a young age all the way through is amazing. It's almost like you're planting that seed for that next generation in 100%. A way that, but you're giving back at the same time.
That is I couldn't agree with you more. And part of that is just simply because of the diversity of programming and wide things that we do on our stages. Those kids are coming in, and sometimes they're seeing for the first time somebody that looks like them. Yeah. That's on the stage, and they begin to understand, maybe that's a possibility. Or they see within our working staff another go, well, that might be an interesting work opportunity. I've never thought about that. And between that, and we have our summer camps, and in our summer camps we have scholarship programs for all our summer camps, because we do not want economics to prohibit you from being able to participate in something that's helpful to you and to your family. And we try to have that as a through line in everything that we do. We run the business well, so that we aren't a burden on the city, but we also are deeply driven by our mission is to inspire each generation. We believe we're in the business of reminding people of how extraordinary humans can be. And in this environment, which has been around for quite some time, where there is so much negativity, somebody needs to be on the other side showing, yeah, but look at this. Look what Kerry Rodriguez did last night with, celebrating the music of Colombia, or what Namesh Patel was able to do on this stage. Or I could sit here and do this over and over and over, and you go, we're by demonstrating. And when we go into those schools with the Story Bringer program and we introduce you to something you already know how to do, which is to write, but you get public adulation for that writing and what you do, we're building your confidence. We're building the future leaders and presenting to them what the future opportunities for work or for their contribution of their life might be. And that is, I don't want to go insane about this, but that's a sacred responsibility. But it's one we have to this community, and we take it very seriously.
It's one that I don't think a lot of people in the community even know that you do.
I think I think you're right. I think, they experience it. And you were talking earlier about it. They know it's different when they come in here. It just is, than any other place that you go to. And we have so many great places you can go hear music, but it's different here. And, in theater terms, it's like we're the fourth character in everything that happens on that stage, because you just feel it. And it's going to be interesting as we'll talk in a little bit about what's the future of this theater and the theater next door.
Well, let's talk about a few other things that you've been doing kind of in the present.
Yep.
You mentioned the Moon Tower Comedy Festival,
right.
15 years,
right.
Just wrapped in April. It's the biggest comedy festival in the country today?
Biggest annual
comedy festival. How did that get started, and did you see that coming at all?
It was really interesting. Before I started doing this, being the executive director of the Austin Theater Alliance, I'd been looking kind of in the landscape of things, because this is a great festival town, and it has been for a long time. Austin as an end destination. And we were entering into kind of this golden age of comedy that was happening, stand-up and film and other things. And I thought this could be really interesting. And then when I made the decision to come and join and become the executive director, our chief programming officer, Litsa Brass, they had been thinking about creating a comedy festival, and they'd even thought about the name of Moon Tower Comedy and Oddity Festival.
Perfect name for the city.
It was absolutely. And so they had the core of an idea, and what I brought to the table was scale. As an entrepreneur, I understood and talked to the board about it from a strategic standpoint of saying, we're going to have to invest in this, a nonprofit. We're going to have to invest in this for at least 3 years before we even know if we have anything. But if we don't do that, what we're going to do is we're going to show somebody else the possibility by trying to creep into the market. And again, the board, to their great credit, they backed that action, and sure enough, the fourth year we broke even, and it just changed everything for us in so many ways. It lowered our average patron age of our patron base. It diversified even more fully the patrons who came in here, because in comedy, you can write a description of a part of the population. There's a comic for that part of that, that part of those things. And I want to divert for just one moment, because one of the things we've talked a couple times about Nimesh Patel, but we had another Middle Eastern comic who came in and sold out the Paramount 1,300 seats hard. And the only reason I bring it up is because that performer performed in Hindi. And there was the population in Austin who wanted the subtlety of comedy to be in their native tongue. And so 1,300 people came in here to hear a comic do Hindi. Now, I love that, but it shows you who this community who it really is. And so what basically happened is, it did lower our age. It did diversify our audience. And maybe more importantly than anything else, it let us shine the light on a burgeoning community that was already here, and that was the comedy community in Austin, Texas. And from the very beginning, what we made sure of was those comics who lived here, that they would be opening for headliners, that they would be in the club shows. I mean, we just the comedy festival we just finished, we had 110 comics from all over the world. I think we did 135 shows
not just at the Paramount. It was all over.
12 different locations, all around, with the exception of Cap City Club, all pretty much walkable from here. But what we're thrilled by, there are now 8 or 9 comedy clubs in this town.
Yeah.
And we really are now known in the world. There's New York, there's LA, and there's Austin for comedy. And what that has meant is we do, throughout the rest of the year, we do another 70, 80 nights of comedy, between the State Theater and here. And that has become a really important part of our business. But it all grew out of this idea that the executive management team, before I was anywhere on the scene, they'd already been thinking about it. And I'd said, all I brought was maybe a scale and immediacy.
Yeah, I mean, and we saw an even bigger push for comedy, say 2020 current. I think we saw a lot of comedy clubs open since. So I feel like Moon Tower probably created that culture where people were coming from outside, Austin, and finding Austin as a comedy destination.
I would agree. I think we were building a patron base who would enjoy comedy, and that's one of the things we hear at Moon Tower from the comics is they love the response of the Austin audiences, whether it's in a club with 40 people or if it's in the Paramount Theatre, or even when we produce over at the HEB Center or Moody, and over there, the reaction of that we have a great reputation as a city in terms of our audience response to comedy, and a wide variety of comedy.
Let's talk film now. We did comedy. It's time to do film. So I've been to some South by Southwest film premieres here. I've seen debuts and premieres with Richard Linklater or Robert Rodriguez or Wes Anderson. Mike Judge has done some amazing things here. We have a really amazing film and TV community. We have the ATX Film Festival, ATX TV, television
and video festival now, right?
Yeah, so I mean, there's
those two
lot.
women are unbelievable who started that and have built it, and they're in their 13th or 14th year as well.
So I mean, the Paramount's at the center of this thing, and I'm sure you've had some fun meeting some interesting guests and seeing some great shows over the year. But how has this theater shaped that over time, from silent movies to talkies to everything else, and now really being an epicenter for when South by comes here? This is where movies come.
Right. Well, I want to go back to something you said, because I couldn't agree with you more. People like Rebecca Campbell, who runs the Austin Film Society and has helped fulfill what Rick Linklater's vision was for the Austin Film Society. Barbara Morgan at Austin Film Festival, now in their 34th, 35th year. Things they're doing. The two young women who have started ATX Television and Video Festival. And South by, from the very, very beginning, and Colette, who left, and Janet Pearson before that, they built the relationships with Hollywood. What we provided was, we have state-of-the-art equipment, sound and video. We can do 70 millimeter, we can do 35 millimeter, we can do full DCP, which is what the studios want. They want their films who are debuting here, and all the big global premieres happen here, and we can do it with 1,273 people in the audience, which means it's going to create a lot of buzz in socials from it. So that plays a really important role. For us, this is now this coming summer is the 51st or 52nd year of the Summer Classic Film Series, a series that was first started by those three gentlemen that I was talking about in the 70s, in part because it was affordable entertainment. It was a way to put people in here, but not the expense of paying for Dave Brubeck, and who was the first one to come back in here in 75. But what has really become an important part about that is families have brought their children going to the Summer Classic Film Series. And we will, on Saturdays and Sundays, in the afternoons, we will do family-friendly films, and we'll do, on a Saturday or Sunday, 3 of those films. But the classics, you can watch. I always say this, it just stuns me. White Christmas. During that season, you could see that on 11 different streaming channels in your house. And yet 1,000 people will come in here in December to watch White Christmas. And why is that? It's because it's a community experience. We are social animals. It's just at our core. I remember I was doing Fresh Air with Audie Cornish during the pandemic, and she asked me, said, do you really think that the theater audiences will come back? And I was incredulous at the question, because I went, no, there's no doubt in my mind. We need to be together. We enjoy when we get to have a communal experience. And when you watch a movie like that, 900 people are all crying together, right? Or you watch Casablanca, our first one every year. 800 to 1,000 people will come in to watch Casablanca, for them the 35th year in a row in it. But it is this whole idea of, we're a gathering place for the community, and that creates a unique experience for everybody.
Yeah, I think it's beautiful, and film is so special here. The amount of history that you've been able to see just in 15 years.
Oh, absolutely. Without it, and I will tell you, Robert Rodriguez is one of the greatest friends any theater could ever have. He's almost until they went to 4D, all the Spy Kids movies have debuted here. He continues to be so deeply involved with us in the with his films, and also programming part of the Summer Classic Film Series. Rick Linklater has always been so phenomenal about debuting, his Oscar-nominated film, Boyhood, and the others here, that we have been, we're really, really fortunate that those who rose in this community have paid back to this house by their loyalty and visibility that they bring to us. And that's, for the Paramount Theatre, we're just the home of South by Southwest Film Festival. We didn't program it, but all the socials, everything you see, you're seeing them talking in front of the Paramount Theatre. Absolutely. And that's great for us, and it's great for Austin.
There was a question I asked you before the break about when you really felt like this is what makes the Paramount special. And you held back, and I held back, because we knew there was one more question I really wanted to talk about. So Jimmy LaFave was a legendary Texas singer-songwriter. And toward the end of his life, there was a really special night here at the Paramount. What happened that night?
Well, Jimmy LaFave, one of the most beautiful singers, in Texas, had been diagnosed with cancer, and he was at the end of his life, and he knew he was at the end of his life, and he elected to, if you will, because he had decided he was no longer going to take treatment. And he reached out to, a dozen or more of his musician friends around the country that he loved their music. And we hosted it, and they all came and performed, not his music, but their favorite music. And he came to us, the EMTs brought him. He was in a wheelchair and on oxygen, but he sat in the lower right portal of the auditorium floor, and every single musician could end whatever they did, just say, "I love you, Jimmy." And you watched him in the interaction. So then he turned to us and he said, and he had such a beautiful high voice, but because of the cancer, it was just scratchy. He turned to us and said, "Is there any way your production people can get me up the steps?" And so everybody was already having an incredibly emotional time. So when he rolls out onto the stage, the entire audience is just gobsmacked. They all stand up, and then he plays. I always get emotional, so he said, "Can I get a guitar?" And they said, "Yeah, we can get you a guitar." And he played, and he sang, "Good night, Irene, I'll see you in my dreams." Now there's not a single dry eye in the house. And he points to his son behind him, and he looks at the audience. He said, "Please take care of my son." And that was it. And nobody wanted to leave the theater. They were standing in groups, hugging and doing all this. And what you saw in that evening was, here was somebody who had done so much for so many people within the music community. And when he had made a decision of how he wanted to end his life, they came out to support him. And then everybody who was in here that night, life was changed forever. Because you were seeing, I guess I'd say, you were seeing the kindness that exists within us all. And we have not to be cheesy, but we have a saying that kindness is paramount. And that evening is probably the most emotional thing I've ever seen on a stage.
And there are emotional things that happen on stages all the time, and that really was. Jimmy someone that you would listen to and knew his music pretty well?
I did, only because my wife, who was from Austin, and she introduced me to Jimmy LaFave when she came to be with me in New York. She introduced me to so many great singer-songwriters. Darden Smith, I'd heard a little bit, but I hadn't listened, a ton to. But she was my entree in really. I had this 35-year gap. I was here 72, 76. I knew those folks, and then I moved here, 15, 16 years ago. She was the through line to all of this. She introduced me to a lot of these folks, Slade Cleaves, that I had never heard of before, and my life was changed by that.
I want to take us from the past, from your memories of Jimmy LaFave to the future today with the Paramount. We've been looking around, and there have been some people behind us.
Probably people could hear them, see
and pictures and some noise. But I really want to talk about this major renovation that's coming soon. What should people understand about the timing and what's about to happen here at the Paramount Theatre and State Theaters?
Right. Well, there's two parts to it, right? The first is the first full restoration of the Paramount Theatre since 1979, so for almost 50 years. The State Theater is completely different. It is a complete rethinking and reimagining the State Theater. But let's take the Paramount right now, because it's the one that will be starting here very shortly. What we will be doing, and for those who watch this, who are patrons here, yes, we are replacing 100% of all the seats in here. That is the number one complaint. These seats are old, and we are replacing. But what's really cool about this is we are really restoring the entire theater. And one of the things we're doing is, you will see in the background for us, you're seeing all the color and the art that's behind us. So much of that, Paramount's beautiful, but she needs a little work done. And for about a 4 or 5 month period, this entire theater will be nothing but scaffolding, and it will be human artists who are redoing all of the ornamentation in here so that it's consistent with the color palette of 1931, when the Majestic became the Paramount Theater. They will see an expanded number of restrooms, so expanded number of bars, so that we can live up to that, take really good care of the patrons, right? And with what we're doing backstage, we can't make this place larger. We're on the National Historic Registry, but we can make it so much nicer for the folks. The other thing is, we're a union house, and I think we may have the longest contract with IATSE in the state of Texas, going back literally 70, 80 years. They are unbelievably talented, but right now we don't give them the most current tools for sound and lighting, and we will be doing that. And then we will be continuing to protect the historic side of things, all the windows, doors, and all of that. And we're also going to complete something that was in the original 1915 plans, which was there were behind the 3 opera windows in the front of the Paramount Theater. There was supposed to be behind that a 1,500 to 1,800 square foot ballroom area. For whatever reason, it was never completed. It was never built out. We're going to finish the 1915 plans with a really lovely lounge that is that JP and Eloise DeJoria have funded, and we're grateful to them. But we're in the middle of this capital campaign to raise for both theaters a total of $66 million, and then on top of that, hopefully another $10 million to establish a real endowment. Because the entire project is how do we protect these theaters for the next 100 years?
Yeah.
And with what we're doing and the resources we have, there's no reason why the artisans' capabilities can't be protected for 100 years. We're replacing all of the HVAC systems and other things, which people go, oh, well, that'll make the patrons more comfortable and the artists more comfortable. Yes, but what it also does, the enemy of this kind of ornamentation is humidity and temperature fluctuation.
Yeah.
And we have really old HVAC systems in here. I'm glad it's not a super hot day right now. But not only will we be modernized, but we'll be protecting everything that we're doing. With the State Theater, it's completely different. The only thing historic that remains of the State Theater, built in 1935, is the front facade, and that's beautiful. We're protecting that, but we are completely changing everything inside. Increasing its seating capacity, increasing dramatically the patron services of concessions and restrooms. In other words, making it far more comfortable, upgrading everything in sound and lighting and flexibility. All of the seating will be on computer-controlled rails to where we can move and have many, many different configurations. So that's what we're doing.
What's the timeline on that? When is it going to kind of start? When do you expect it to end in terms of renovation?
Well, one of the things that, if you've been listening to this or seeing behind us, you've been seeing our contractors, J.E. Dunn, as well as sound engineers and others that are here, because right around the middle of June, we will be turning the Paramount Theater over to J.E. Dunn to start the construction. And that will last, let's be generous, 11 months.
Okay.
Our expectation is that we'd be reopened middle of May of 27.
So not in time for Moon Tower, not in time for South by.
No, and we will, and they all know that, but we're keeping the state open.
Okay.
And helping them with other things in it, but we will have a Moon Tower.
Okay.
It just won't look like Moon Tower right now, and I think it's going to be pretty cool, the plans we have for it. But we will be closed for 11 months, and it's going to be really interesting to watch when we welcome the city back into this place, because it's going to be spectacular.
That's my next question. When someone comes back after the renovation, what will feel different to them? How do you preserve this but also modernize it? How do you do that and walk that line?
Well, I think we're so grateful to the preservation community, Preservation Austin, the Texas Historic Commission, the Historic Commission of the City of Austin. They are great stewards of this, which holds our feet to the fire to be great stewards of all of this. I think the things that they will, beyond the creature comforts, obviously, when you have more restroom capacity, it means you're not standing in that line. When you have more concession capacity, you're not standing in line so much, so you're able to be, a little more accessible to things. But I think what you'll really feel is a freshness. There are things that when you come in here that they did an unbelievable job in 1979, unbelievable. But there's a little bit of inconsistency to the sort of the decor and colors that are used to, relative to what would have been appropriate in 1930, 31 when it became the Paramount Theater. So you're going to see a little more consistency in the color palettes, but I think you're going to feel freshness. She already sounds really good, and the lighting is good. It's going to be phenomenal, and I think you'll feel that. What you'll also feel is the history. It's like we have behind us here. I'm not looking at the shot, but I'm thinking you're able to see St. Cecilia behind us back here. Just don't look too closely, because you start looking and you see all the peeling and the things that are happening, because those are compound materials. It's not just paint. And so she will be completely refreshed. St. Cecilia will be here, but she will be completely refreshed. And there are going to be those things. The other thing you're going to feel, if you come in here, you can still accept and believe we have ghosts.
Let's talk about ghosts for a second. They've been here a long time.
They have been here a long time. Actually, and I don't know if you're getting this in the shot, I'm sorry to do that to you, but there is a light that is on the stage right now, a single bare light. That's called a ghost light. In any theater, traditional theater, you never let the theater go completely dark. And so every theater that there is has that in it. The ghosts are, there's two in particular that have been prevalent. An elderly gentleman who sits in the opera box left, wearing a fedora and smoking a cigar. And he has been seen so many times. The other one, and the one is the woman who is most famous, is the woman in white. And she is we're sitting just atop the mezzanine level here. She is always seen coming out of this. These are called voms. The entrants are called voms. She is always seen coming out of this vom and always moving to the south along here, kind of floating through the air. And what people don't know is that actually next door to us, between us and the Stephen F. Austin, Royal Sonesta Stephen F. Austin, is the sole remaining wall from the Department of the Army for the Republic of Texas. And the belief is that her husband or boyfriend had gone off to war and never returned, and she's always trying to find out what happened, because she's always moving that in this direction here. And so people don't think I'm just making this up. Most recently, a couple of years ago, we had a podcast that had music part of it, and they had done their sound check, and the keyboard player hung around after it. He hadn't been in the Paramount, and he was taking a series of photos with the motor drive, and he realized he saw a figure come to the top of the vom, and he kept shooting, and she kind of moved up into the air. Didn't say anything to us, posted it then on Facebook, and the whole thing blows up because the local media loves to hear a ghost story. And that had nothing to do with us. So,
if you're watching on YouTube, you should be watching for a white figure going right through us and maybe moving to the right.
It could be. In fact, we're not sure I'm who I am. I might, in fact, be a figment of your imagination right now.
Anything's possible in the theater.
And that's so true.
Absolutely. I feel like there's so much imagination that's kind of the heart of Austin here. I think I have one final question for you.
What's that?
Which is, when someone walks out of the Paramount Theater 20 years from now, past your term, past the time that this renovation's been done, what do you hope they feel? And is that the same as what they've always felt, or is there anything different?
I think it'll be the external environment that will have changed, that will make things that we feel right now more important. And what I mean by that is, and I frequently say this, this is a place where people have their first date, their first kiss. They got engaged here. They've been married here. They've been memorialized here. And what it means to those individuals is already so important. But if we continue in the external world over the next 2 decades to be fragmented, to be certainly inundated with negative messaging and other things, all those things, being made to cry by a drama, being made to think by a speaker, being made to laugh by a comic, whatever it is, I think those emotions are going to become more intensely needed in the external environment. And one thing I can pledge to you during my time of leadership is we're going to ensure that that's what happens, that you come in here and whatever you see on our stage, you are going to be moved in some way emotionally, whether it is to cry, whether it is to be thoughtful, whether it is to laugh, whatever it is, you're going to walk out of here emotionally changed or recharged, because that's our responsibility in the community.
If someone wants to pledge or be a part of the capital campaign, it's called Shine On, is that right?
It's Shine On, the Shine On campaign.
And you're doing pretty well already.
We are. We have raised just over $31 million, and we are hoping there's going to be a November 26 bond election in the city, and that we will. We've been talking to everybody so they understand our story and the part we've done by raising the money, and we're hoping we'll be part of that bond. But where people can go, and what's so beautiful about this is if somebody gives us $5, it's helpful to us. If somebody gives us $5 million, it's helpful to us.
That'd be good too. Yeah.
Well, we have almost 297 people, 97,000 people in our data banks. Imagine if those people were to pledge $10 a month for 5 years, right? That's $600. Begin to do that math, and you go, all of a sudden, that may be what creates the endowment. But they can go to austintheater.org, which is our website, and you'll see a big place to go through for the Shine On campaign, and you can contribute that, and we would be very grateful for the participation. We already are feeling it from the community.
It's great. Jim, I really appreciate you taking the time to do this, and even more for the work that you're actually doing here. I think for a lot of people in Austin, the Paramount is one of those places that holds memories, whether it's a school field trip, a show, a film, a moment. It's rare to have something like this in a city that's changing this quickly. And the fact that it's not just being preserved, but actually being built for the next 100 years is what gets me excited, and it really, I think, really makes this special. So thank you for what you're doing right now, and we're just excited to see what comes next. Jim
Adam,
Ritts, thank you for joining Austin Eras.
I am so honored that you invited me. Thank you so much for the support.
All right, please like, share, and post more on the Austin Eras website. Find our podcast anywhere you get your podcasts, and we look forward to having you tune in to our next episode.
Austin Eras, featuring Adam Flagg, is brought to you by Collective Advisors. Collective Advisors offers investment advisory services through CWM LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor. Guests on Austin Eras are not affiliates of CWM LLC, and opinions expressed by guests may not reflect those of CWM LLC. This show is intended for educational and entertainment purposes and is not intended to provide specific legal, tax, or other professional advice. For a comprehensive review of your personal situation, always consult with a qualified professional.